You're now tuned into the Small Business Origins Podcast.
I love an origin story.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Small Business Origins. It's your host, as always, John Kelly, aka John the Marketer. You're tuned in to our nationwide search to find entrepreneurs all across the country with an interesting story to tell. Today's story actually comes from Tomball, Texas. I've got Mick and Maggie with Bramble Bee. Mick, Maggie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Man, it's my pleasure. As always, we've got a personal connection, even though we've never met. And then we've got a business connection. You know, we have a client that comes to y'all, a client that comes to us. So this feels like the podcast that was always supposed to happen. And it finally is. I couldn't be happier. So I'm excited to hop into it. But first, as always, we always start out with an icebreaker question. So today's icebreaker question is, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I was very aspirational as a child. And even though it is absolutely nothing like what I'm doing now, I wanted to be a doctor from like a very young age. And then it morphed when I was old enough to know what kind of doctors you could have into wanting to very specifically be a plastic surgeon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good money in that, I'm sure.
I have no idea why I wanted to be a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, and I guess I started playing rugby, as you can guess, from my East Texas accent. I'm not from these parts. But around about 10 or 11 years old, I started playing rugby. And I did that sort of semi-professionally up to being about 19. I wanted to do that and carry on, but unfortunately I didn't get signed professionally. So I went into engineering from there. But yeah, definitely wanted to be a rugby player, sportsman.
Yeah, I wasn't too far off as a kid from my current job. I wanted to be a cop. And then I just figured out being a firefighter is better. You know, it's just a better job.
Yes.
So I lucked out and had a change in career. And here I am today. But for some reason, man, I guess it was probably my mother and my grandfather were both police officers. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of that like, I want to follow in their footsteps type thing. And then as things change when you grow up, as you know, it just all of a sudden it was like, oh, go into EMS and then go into fire. And then here we are. Yep. I think I started that in 2005. So quite a few years later.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, before we hop into our show, I always stop to take a second to talk about our partner in the show, the one who produces it, the one who edits it, the one who gets it out to the public, and that's Beefy Marketing. But Beefy Marketing is not all about social media, websites, and all that kind of marketing stuff that we talk about every single episode. Beefy Marketing can print your promotional items and custom shirts, jackets, and much more. When they say marketing, they mean marketing. And what better way to promote your business than wearing your logo on an amazing design on a t-shirt? Or maybe you need some uniform polos for all of your staff in the office. Or last but not least, maybe you want a really cool jacket like the one I'm wearing now. And if you can't see it because you're listening to the audio version, you might want to tune into YouTube because this is a nice North Face jacket. We can put your logo right on it for you. Not a problem at all. Every year, Beefy Marketing attends a huge promotional products conference to make sure that they're bringing you items people don't want to throw away. Promotional items are huge. They're giveaways. They're gifts for your employees. They're things to give to your clients just to show appreciation. And Beefy Marketing is always there to make sure that the promotional items you're getting are top notch. Schedule a call today and see what Beefy can print for you. But back to the reason we're here. Mick, Maggie, Bramble Bee. Let's start off with your personal story. Just tell me where you came from and how you decided to get into flowers.
Mm-hmm. I grew up in Texas. Well, I was born in Texas and actually primarily grew up in California. I lived in California from the age of 10 until I was 19 and didn't want to move back to Texas. My family had moved back to Texas while I was in college, and they tried to convince me that I wanted to transfer and go to A&M so I could be near them, but I was going to college in Santa Barbara on the beach, and I was like, this is not a contest. Yeah. So I stayed in California as long as I could. And then, in an effort to not move back to Texas and sow my wild oats, I moved to Massachusetts for a little while. So I lived in the Boston area for a while. I studied kinesiology in college. So that's what my degree is in. And I wanted to be a physical therapist. So I took a job that was along those lines that allowed me to move to Boston. And I thought ultimately I would go to graduate school for physical therapy. I moved back to Texas in the hopes that I would apply to programs in the Houston area and get in. and actually spent a couple years applying, never got in, but it's fortuitous because now we are where we are. So I've lived in the Houston area now for almost 12 years. And I started the business kind of as a side hustle almost 10 years ago in an effort to not have to work retail as a newlywed anymore because I hated those hours were the worst. We've been married almost 10 years now too, which is pretty great. Yes. And you can have that part of the story.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I grew up playing rugby. When I didn't get signed professionally, my uncle and my brother were both engineers, and I was like, that seems like a great field to go into. I went into mechanical engineering because I like taking things apart and putting things back together. I was fortunate enough, I lived in a place called Sheffield, which is one of the biggest cities in England that nobody in the US has heard of. Very industrial city. And I managed to get onto a training program where it's called an apprenticeship, where basically you go to work and they pay for college. So it's day release to college, and you could also go to night school if it was work related. So I ended up getting my engineering degree there, worked at the end of my apprenticeship, became a test engineer for the products that they exported, did a lot of travel, but it's great traveling for business, but it's very lonely. So I decided, I was in a relationship and decided to branch out, go some different manufacturing routes, anything from kind of like machine knives to engine car parts. And then I got the opportunity to become an operations manager, the biggest private steel stockholder in the UK. And I was in charge of the head office. We had 110 staff, or I had 110 staff that I was responsible for, including drivers, warehousemen. And that was like a 24/7 operation. Thankfully, I only had to work Monday to Friday. And then that was the kind of, what would you call it? The catalyst that kind of like brought me over here. So during the downturn, the company in the 2009 economic downturn.
Yeah, which one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. They wanted to branch out and get into like oil and gas. And a guy from the States came across, pitched him a business idea, and then they decided to open their first warehouse facility outside the UK. So they advertised internally for operations manager. They interviewed people over here, but couldn't find somebody who was like the right fit. And they needed somebody who like knew the health and safety systems, knew the quality systems, knew the environmental stuff, because that's all what they're really known for in the UK, of like being on the cutting edge of steel stockholding. So then they advertised internally. It was the right time, right opportunity for me. I came to Houston for a weekend, didn't even know where Houston was, never been to the States before. But the two guys, the president and vice president, they were so personable, and it just felt like the right time to move. And plus also, there was some decent financial incentives, we'll say. And it was only supposed to be initially a 2-year contract, but here I am 10 years later. So
you're still fully employed with a
no.
full-time? Okay.
So that, I guess we can, I don't know, do we need to go back a bit? Or so we got married in 2013, like Maggie alluded to earlier. We had a conversation where it kind of sucked because I was off on the weekend and Maggie was working because she was working retail. And at the time, we were having to fly into London every time and then drive up to where my parents live, which is about a 4-hour drive. And on the way back down to come back to the States, Maggie was like, she kind of pitched me this idea of like, hey, retail sucks. I hate not seeing you on a weekend. I really love flowers. I think it's something I could like either start as a side hustle or kind of get into and make a living from it. And I was like, okay, well, we can't financially like let you do it full time.
Mhm.
So my challenge to her was like, hey, go get a bank account, get a DBA, get some training, and then also we need you to get a part-time job. And in typical Maggie fashion, within the first 2 weeks of the like next year in 2014, she'd done everything. And that's when like Bramble Bee officially started, which really started from the house that we was renting at the time. So
Yeah, I can talk about Bramble and Bee origin story if you're ready for that.
You know what? I have a question first.
Okay.
Yes.
How did y'all meet?
We met at church.
Okay.
Adorable. Yep.
it's kind of convoluted, but not convoluted. But,
Were y'all in Houston?
Yeah.
Okay.
We still go to the same church.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yep,
So
it's in the Woodlands.
it's in the Woodlands. I came over here. I asked my the vice president became him and his wife became like pseudo parents for me. Even though I was 33 when I came across, they took me under their wing.
Yeah, but we're dudes, so
Yeah.
we need parents all
Yeah.
throughout our life.
Yes.
Like,
I think his wife was concerned that I wasn't feeding myself or something. Because like nearly every weekend I was around Fridays and Saturdays.
yeah.
So they invited me to church, and I grew up unchurched in the UK, and out of respect to him, he's like, "Hey, what are you doing on Sunday?" I was like, "Recovering from Saturday." Like, what do you do on a Sunday morning? And he's like, "No, you should come to church." Because I told prior to coming over, I'd just become the godfather to my nephew, and you know, through the baptism, you like renounce the devil and all those things. And,
Right.
so it's having this discussion of, you know, maybe I should start taking that seriously. And he's like, well, you should come to church. So I started coming to church, and they played like modern music, and the woman singing was amazing. And there was drums and a guitar, and I like,
Yeah.
hey, I love live music. So even if I'm not on board with like the whole church thing, at least, you know, there's nice people. And but yeah, so that's been a journey in itself. I've found my faith and come to Christ and everything else. But Maggie also started coming to church roughly around the same time that I started going.
Yep. So the wife of the vice president of the company that brought him across was my mentor for a really long time before we met.
Okay, so just connection
Yeah.
after connection
Yeah.
after connection. It was
Yeah.
like divine intervention
Indeed.
almost.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, they're still some of our dearest friends. And
Yeah.
we met at church, got married.
That's
Here we
killer.
are.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just curious because and that's the exact reason why. Like, it's so crazy how connected y'all were, even though you're a world apart.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, how did they meet? Like, it had to be MySpace or something, you know? And then nope, it's church.
And at least like 5 or 6 times a year, we have a minute where we look at each other and we're like, 12 years ago when you were living in the UK, did you ever think you would be doing XYZ? And the
No.
answer is always no.
Yeah. So, all right. So we can hop into it.
Yeah.
You know, it started out as a side hustle,
Yeah.
and then 2014, 2 weeks later, you had everything you needed to go. And then
Yeah.
when did that kind of become full time?
So I actually started doing flowers. I learned to do flowers at church also. I really wanted to be friends with this one woman at church, and she stood up one day and was like, I really need help with flowers if anyone's interested in helping. And I was like, can we be friends if I help?
Yeah.
So she kind of taught me everything she knew. I was always creative growing up, but I leaned more towards sciences and more like traditional academics, partly because I don't think I was a very high achiever, and I don't think I ever associated the arts with making a living
Sure.
or doing anything like that. So I did art classes in college, but just as electives, never like leaned into anything in particular. But I always had some sort of artsy thing going. So even, you know, when I lived in Boston, I took a drawing class. When I was in college, I did painting here and there and that kind of stuff, but just as fun on the side. And yeah, so I started helping this woman at church with flowers. I would not have said in my earlier days that I was particularly artistic. Like, I'm not a very good painter. I'm not a very good drawer. But with flowers, I kind of found my medium. So I realized that I actually could put flowers together in a nice way without too much effort. And that was great. Cool. We're going to lean into that a little bit. So I did flowers with the church for about 6 months before somebody at the church came to the flower ministry and was like, hey, my daughter's getting married. Can you guys do the flowers for it? And we were like, yeah. And by we, I mean, Jennifer, my friend, was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, can we? We know how to do this. Okay, great. So we did that first wedding together at the church. And shortly after that, someone else was like, hey, I know you guys did this wedding. Could you do my daughter's wedding? And Jennifer was like, well, I can't, but Maggie probably can. So we did our first like kind of random wedding. And I say we because even though Mick was working full time, he still very much was involved, mostly in talking me off of ledges,
Right.
And helping me deliver and set up. But I have always referred to the business as a collective we because I never wanted it to just be me. So hopefully it's not confusing when I say we in the early.
Not to me.
early
I don't know
days.
about the listener, but I get
Okay,
it
great.
100%. I'm married.
Great. Yeah. So we, did our first random strangers wedding. And once we did that, I had a realization where I was like, well, at the very least, I could go part-time in retail if I can do a wedding here and there. And then maybe I won't have such crappy hours. And
Right.
that would be great.
Work
Until I
less.
figure out what I'm actually going to do with my life. We can balance between flowers and retail. And this is not to discredit retail. Also, I am one of those weirdos who actually really loved working retail, but as a newlywed, the hours really did suck.
Oh, yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
it's hectic.
And I was in management at retail also. So I worked for a company called Anthropology, and I think I worked for Anthropology in its heyday, which I also think contributed to a lot of the entrepreneurialism and the creativity that ended up in the flower business, because that place is an incredibly creative place to work. It's also been really helpful because I was the hiring and training manager when I worked for Anthropology. So my entire job was hiring people,
Yeah.
training them, interviews, all of that. So I think it's helped me to be a better people person in my own
You have
business
to have
now.
a good team around you.
Exactly.
So if you don't know how to build and cultivate
Yeah.
that team, then that's when it goes to crap. You
Yeah.
may be great at flowers, but if you're not great at people,
Yeah.
you're not going to have a good shop. That makes sense.
Exactly. And I think I stayed in retail for as long as I did because I have a customer service. I'm skilled at customer service,
Right.
which translates to any industry. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Oh, 100%.
And you enjoyed the discount.
I also enjoyed the discount. That is true. Yeah, so I did a holiday season at Anthropology, and my target in September was to hire 80 people in 3 weeks for a holiday.
God.
And after we did that and I was working on scheduling, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And so that was the year we went to the UK for Christmas. I had the realization that I probably could do flowers if I hustled a little bit. And so we got back January and I hit the ground running. And yeah, so I'm self-taught-ish. My friend at church obviously taught me everything she knew. But then I just kind of kept playing with flowers. And I didn't know anything about the flower industry when we started. And in my head, the flower industry is a flower shop. That's what you do with flowers. You
Right.
open a flower shop and you sell arrangements to whoever calls and wants them delivered. But there's an entire side to the industry that's focused on weddings. And in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a lot of people who lean into that side and actually never dabble in retail flowers. So we started out entirely as a wedding business, which means you don't have to have a storefront. You don't have to have set hours.
Right.
You're by appointment only when you're meeting with a bride, and then you can work wherever you need to work in order to get your flowers done, and you deliver them to the venue. So it's actually $0 to start a wedding business, which is
Right.
great. I know.
Hey, that's why
Well,
that's
here's
why
the
I have
thing.
an event services company, because
Yeah.
we do DJ and live
Yeah.
streaming and photo booth for weddings,
Yeah.
all kinds of events. But
Yeah.
weddings is one of them, and I don't need like this office, though it houses us.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
Everything can fit in my garage.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And initially we weren't terribly picky about what client we worked with, but now in the wedding industry, it's pretty great because we've made a name for ourselves based on the particular design style that we have. So
Yep.
clients come to us because they want our work, and we don't necessarily have to cater to what they want, doing a style that doesn't bring us joy, but that's down the line. Yeah. So for about 6 months, probably closer to a year, I did weddings out of our house, and I would meet brides at Starbucks, and we would talk through their vision and all of that. And yeah, then we lived in
the arrangements were usually on the kitchen side. As I'd come home and, we were eating out that night, and if I wanted a shower, I had to go out in the yard because the bathtub was full of foam and flowers and
my gosh.
Yeah, we had about 900 square feet that we lived in at the time, and most of it was taken up with flowers any given weekend. So after about a year, I was working part-time in retail at that point, though I also got suckered into management again, just because I was doing retail management from Sunday through Wednesday, and then doing weddings Wednesday to Saturday.
God.
And yeah, it was a hustle.
Your hours went crazier probably
Right.
than if you'd have just stayed full-time retail.
And this is the thing we still laugh about, where I was like, I want to be a florist. I want to own my own business, so I'll have more time with you. I'll have weekends. We'll have more flexibility. False.
Yeah.
It's a different type of busy and scheduling conflicts now, but we still work every single weekend. So about a year in, I had the opportunity to move into a studio space with some other wedding industry professionals, with a wedding planner, a wedding photographer, and a cake baker, and we were all sharing a workspace, which we actually downgraded. Like, again, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I did not intend to run a business. We were figuring out as we go, and this seemed like a great opportunity. It was in a cute little house in River Oaks, and we all got a room to work in, which in theory is great. I was the only one doing actual physical work in my space. They were all just meeting clients. So it was a really beautiful little house that was designed to, make a bride feel really cozy and trust all the people who were working on her wedding. But I had 125 square feet where we were producing 2 weddings a weekend.
Wow.
And I'm sure all the people I shared this space with hated us, but it was so good for our business because we overflowed every single week. And that means the wedding planning company is having brides come in to meet, and I've got flowers all over their meeting space. And it just kind of our business exploded at that point for us. So I think we increased. The first year that we did weddings, I did about 12. The second year we did about 24. Wow. And then the third year, it just kind of continued to exponentially grow. So we worked in that space for about a little under a year before we, pretty early on, we knew we needed bigger space. And Mick was working, his office was near the airport. My business obviously was downtown. We were living in Magnolia. And so both of us were commuting about 45 minutes to an hour each way to our respective places. And Tomball, where we are now, is right in the middle of all of those places. So we used to meet at Cisco's, the Mexican restaurant downtown, for dinner. And we're driving down the road at one night going to dinner and found a building that was for lease. And we were like, that's a big old space. That could be a flower shop. And more divine intervention. We needed someone to take over our lease downtown, and we found some people who wanted to do it, which was great. So I got out of my lease downtown early. Yeah, and the space had already been revamped because I think it used to be a lawyer's office, and it had separated walls, but it's an accountant.
Yeah. Sorry. And it's 2,200 square feet of just open space.
Yeah.
Which again is different from traditional flower shops, because if you come into our shop, you can shop the giftables at the front, but you'll also see us doing wedding prep at the back, and you can come and look at the wedding flowers, and everybody loves just coming and seeing what we're doing as well. But yeah, that was kind of crazy. I was like, I don't know how we can do it, but even if we have to pay rent on both spaces, we need to figure it out. But sorry, I'm jumping in on your story. But then we had an understanding from the people that we were renting the space downtown. They were like, oh, sure, go look, find yourself a bigger space. You need a bigger space. And then when we said, oh, we found a bigger space, they was like, oh, well, you've still got so many months left on your agreement here. And we was like, oh, okay. But then again, like Maggie said, divine intervention, and some other friends who are florists also, they've been working out of their respective garages, and they needed a space to store things and meet clients and do what we were doing.
Right.
So they took over our lease. So that released us from the lease.
Mm-hmm.
So then, we started repainting the shop and fitting it out. And
August of 2016, we moved into our space that we're in now. We never intended to be a retail shop because it is a lot of work to make money in retail flowers. It is it's more work in smaller amounts of time to make money in wedding and event floral.
Gotcha.
So I never wanted to be a retail florist, but when we moved into the space we're in Tomball, it has a storefront on a main street. So we decided to add retail flowers. And yeah, that was 2016. So we do both retail flowers and wedding and events. We still specialize in wedding and events. Depends on the year, and COVID has thrown everything into chaos, but typically we do between 80 to 100 weddings in a year.
God.
Yeah, it's intense. And then we do funerals, daily deliveries, baby showers, bridal showers, anything that you might want flowers for or on.
That's
we will do it.
I think one of the coolest things, like if we'll do a wedding for somebody, if then the bride's doing a bridal shower or there's a special birthday, or we get to kind of like live the special moments and also the sad moments, because obviously life deals you those blows, but you kind of then like you're their florist and their go-to, and it's just, we build a lot of personal relationships with the clients as well as professional, which I really enjoyed.
That's the part of entrepreneurship that means the most to me, is the fact that you are able to have that personal relationship, because I'm very much so that type of salesman. Like if we don't have a relationship, I don't want to sell to you. I don't want to just sit there and knock on somebody's door and say, hey, I'm here to sell you something, sell it, and then leave. Like I want to know you. I want to be friends with you, go out and have drinks, go out and eat, whatever the case may be. We're here to kind of be a partner. And it's like, if I wasn't that way as an entrepreneur, it just wouldn't be enjoyable to me. Customer service is one of my favorite things. So I can relate to that.
I think that kind of segues into the type of flower shop that we opened, because there are flower shops. I mean, there's like 4 flower shops within a 5-mile radius.
Right.
So did Tomball need another flower shop? Probably not. But we were opening here anyway. And we kind of call ourselves the anti-flower shop flower shop. So like, I don't do traditional flowers. We don't do a dozen red roses in a vase with baby's breath. We don't do prom corsages. We don't do the like more traditional things that you think of when you think of like old school flower shops. Our shop specializes in using specialty flowers and designing them in a like more garden style. So they're more organic arrangements. We use a lot of locally grown flowers, and we use a lot of flowers that you don't find at grocery stores or at traditional florists, like garden roses and other, I can list a lot of names of flowers, but it doesn't make a whole lot of difference to listeners. So
I just don't even know what we're talking about without seeing it. So
exactly. So our flowers don't look like if you called the other flower shop and asked them for a vase arrangement, our vase arrangement will look very different. And we have been very intense about making sure that our client knows what you are ordering is this. Is this what you're expecting? And we're not the flower shop for everybody, but we're the flower shop for a lot of people. And we have clients now that like don't even ask us for anything. Actually, our shop specializes in retail flowers in a designer's choice arrangement. So you don't even know what you're going to get. You just know that it's going to be good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And people's kind of just taking that ride with us, because we, instead of trying to figure out, hey, we need to buy these flowers for the wedding, these flowers for retail, we basically, when we started out, we're like, we'll just pull from the wedding up to like Thursday or Friday for retail, and then we'll just backfill if we're short any.
And the way that we design for weddings, we're taking into seasonal availability and like seasonal design. So your retail flowers end up being fresher and prettier and more seasonally appropriate, just because you're letting us pick whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the top of the line stuff that's available now, not can I scrounge around and find something.
Exactly.
It's like having crawfish out of crawfish season.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't want to do that. Yeah. We don't want peonies and not peony season.
Right. I don't know what that means, but somebody listening does.
Yeah.
I'm not a flower guy, so this is a very interesting show for me because there's so much to learn about it.
Yeah.
How much goes into a wedding as far as flowers? Like how many different pieces are you putting together, and what do we call them? Like all that stuff.
So we've been doing this for 10 years, and
It took us a minute to figure it out.
Yeah. And I also am a little bit of a people pleaser. So I wanted to be able to do flowers for anyone and everyone that came to us. But again, we were finding ourselves doing 100 weddings a year, and that's not it's not sustainable for a small team of people who want to have any sort of life outside of work. So we started kind of scaling up what we do. So we do have a minimum that we charge for full service weddings, which means that our team is going to fully come on site for your wedding. We're going to install all your flowers. We're going to come back at the end of the night. We're going to take it all down so that you don't have to touch any part of that decor. And for that, we charge a minimum of $10,000. We had to figure out how to accommodate everybody because it hurts my heart. But I understand that $10,000 is
and it hasn't always been 10,000.
Right.
It's just as we've
scaled up as we've gone because we needed to be able to
do bigger events and everything.
We needed to be able to manage workload.
Yeah. And we're trying to do the bigger events where we don't have to take on as much work so we can concentrate doing what we're doing really well and execute it excellently. Sorry, I forgot. Banging on the desk. I'm sure that sounds amazing for people who's listening. But yeah, we'd rather do less events, but the bigger events, and like I say, execute them to a T like we do, and the pride that we take in the work rather than rushing and trying to get one done so half the team can leave to go to do another one. Because we did do that when we was at a lower minimum. Sometimes we'd do 5 to 7 events a week.
God, yeah.
Like starting on a Thursday through to Sunday.
And we're not a big team.
We're not a big team, and we're really fortunate. There's a ton of really talented people who love to do flowers, but they're not interested in owning a business. So they'll come and they'll freelance for you, which is great for us as a small business because you only carry the overhead when you need to. Right. So like when you've got an event, you staff up accordingly. But when you haven't got events or it's just normal day-to-day stuff, you're not thinking, I've got to make that payroll, etc.
That's a whole other conversation about the industry that you can make a living as a freelance florist. In case anyone's interested, you can be a freelance florist when you grow up
and travel the world.
Yeah. But getting us back to what goes into a wedding. So for us, a full-scale wedding is typically your full bridal party, and we're in Texas. So brides got a lot of bridesmaids. Yep. Typically we see anywhere from like 4 to 10 bridesmaids.
I think we had 6 at our wedding. Yeah. 6 on each side.
Pretty standard. Yeah. We'll do some sort of installation for a ceremony. So a beautiful ceremony arch or a cross with decor, with flowers and decor on it. Moving into the reception space, we'll have centerpieces for all your tables. Typically we have low centerpieces and tall, like more grand centerpieces. And we kind of specialize in installations. So hanging flowers from ceilings or building walls out of flowers, doing that kind of thing.
That was kind of my jam, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of figuring out the mechanics of Maggie's like, hey, I want to like hang this from here. And how do I do it? And I don't.
Mechanical engineer brain, go build me something.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So we do full service weddings as our primary gig, but we wanted to cater to everybody or be able to cater to everyone. So we also offer a la carte weddings for any budget. That just means that we're not going to come set it up for you. So you tell us what you want. We'll design it all. It's going to be incredible and amazing. It'll be ready and packed up in boxes at the shop for you or your wedding party team to pick up en route to the wedding or the day before. So that way, if you want our design style, we can accommodate just about anything.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's important too that people understand the work that goes into this stuff. Like, it's not just somebody decided, hey, you know what, I want to make a bunch of money. So, I want to do less events. So I'm going to charge $10,000 for it. Yeah. It's like, no, there's a whole team going into this. There has to be money to make. Yeah. And like you said, the quality will suffer. Yeah. And so the service industry, I think we all get a bad rap of, well, you're so expensive and it's just not necessary. Your cost is so low. And it's like, well, supply and demand along with the quality you want.
And I think in the floral industry, I know the wedding industry in general gets a bad rap, and a lot of people have the assumption that because it's a wedding, we're going to charge more for it or something like that. Yep. Which is untrue.
I've heard that.
And debunking this myth. Our retail flowers are the same as our wedding flowers. But the cost of flowers is insane. Even in just the 10 years that we've been doing flowers, the cost of flowers to me has almost doubled.
God.
So, and our cost to our brides has not doubled. So it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky managing expectations, because I do think we get a lot of people who are like, that's really expensive. And you're like, I wish I could say I was making a huge amount of money on it.
Right.
But I'm not.
Well, and it is expensive.
Yeah.
But is it worth it to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Because not everyone's your client.
Yeah.
But there's also like, I think we've talked tons about it, and we talk with our peers as well about a lot of people don't understand there's like so much knowledge that Maggie's got of different types of flowers and what's in season. And yeah, you can use your wholesaler as like, hey, I'm after this. Is it available this time? But Maggie's like, we're sourcing flowers from all over the world. We're planning weeks in advance of the actual event. And then we actually start, like if we're delivering a wedding on a Saturday, we'll start prepping on a Tuesday. So we'll get all the flowers in. You have to condition the flowers. Like they come in from a wholesaler, but then you have to like treat them in a certain way. Some flowers you have to boil a kettle, and you have to cook, do like a fresh cut, and then pour boiling water on the ends of them to like seal the stems. And then there's other flowers you have to like use in a certain way, and you have to take so many of the leaves off. If you don't take the leaves off, they'll start rotting in the bucket. And then as you're arranging, you've got to like manipulate them in a certain way so they look the best on that day. So there's just so much that goes into it, like all the hard goods that you've got to procure and think about. And again, like supply issues, as every industry's faced.
Yep.
We've really hit it, like just something simple. We use a certain type of glue. It's like a rubber glue, especially for flowers, a cold glue, and literally all the wholesalers in the entire US have like been out of it. So you're trying to source it, and usually you can pick up a tube around the $6 or $7 mark from a wholesaler, to resorting to finding somebody on Amazon who supply and demand $22 a tube. But you can't pass that cost on to the client at that point.
Right.
We wrote all the costs and planning for this wedding 9 months before.
Yep.
We had to go procure everything. So, and it happened, the glue was a big issue. Also flowers. We get a lot of flowers from Central and South America, and there was really terrible weather in Central and South America. We're planning for an April wedding starting in October. Right. And there's a torrential rainstorm that wipes out the crop of white roses that we needed for this April wedding in February. So now we have to pivot and figure out where we're going to find white roses, as is everyone else in the globe who wanted white roses for that week in April. So there's so many variables that, again, I knew nothing when we started a flower business, but the learning curve has been steep, and we feel like when we feel like we've mastered it, something else exciting happens. So we'll see what's going to happen this year.
So on the retail side, if I'm just looking to swing by and grab something for the wife or something for your mom, or, something along those lines, what is kind of like your cheapest options that you have available for that? So
we do kind of two styles of design. We do a wrapped bouquet that comes in a cute little brown paper bag. It doesn't have a vase on it because we assume that a lot of people already have a gazillion vases, and you don't need another one to throw away from me. So you can do a wrapped bouquet, and typically those start around $50 and go up from there. And we also do vase arrangements, because sometimes you don't have a vase. And our vase arrangements typically start around $65, $70 and go up from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not even like, as a whole, you're super expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say you're middle of the road as far as your competitors are concerned. Yeah. And then because of your style, it's not even a competition. So,
yeah. And I think something that's interesting, something that I didn't know going in, but we do occasionally get pushback on prices. And usually it's to say, well, the grocery store has 12 roses, has a dozen roses for $19. Grocery stores own flower farms. They own the farms that they're getting their flowers from. So they're not having to source anything. They're planting exactly what they need, and it doesn't cost them the same that it costs me to source the flowers. So, but also the quality of flowers you're going to get from me is going to be way better than the grocery store flowers. So
yeah, I know that my wife would much rather have a $50, and not just because of price, but the quality difference and where it came from matters too. I mean, Chris Lee and I, your brother-in-law, our personal connection, we were just talking about this, think yesterday at the fire station, and we're like, yeah, you know, the thing is Gucci bags. Everybody wants a Gucci bag, and they want to pay $2,000 for a Gucci bag, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
Because of the name on it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's quality differences. Don't get me wrong. A $20 Walmart purse doesn't hold up to a $2,300 Gucci bag. But at the same time, there is something to say about, hey, this particular style, this particular florist does something that people enjoy and love. And even though it may look similar or, you know, the quality may be similar, it's still not that person's work.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that you've kind of built that audience that enjoys your style is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I do feel like we kind of skipped over the part where Mick came on full time. Just so no one is confused.
Yeah, I had that
Mick
question.
Mick does work full time. He doesn't just crash our podcast.
So
recordings.
You came here expecting a 2-year contract, and then you were going to fly home.
Yeah, basically, I have he's now 15-year-old, going to be 16 in February, with my first wife, and he lives in the UK with his mom. Like I say, I was in the middle of all that messiness of figuring that out and living with my mom, came over here, and I was like, well, at least it's a 2-year contract. Financially, it sounds like a good idea. If it's just 2 years, that's cool. Obviously, found my faith, started dating Maggie, got married to Maggie, and I'm actually a US citizen now. So I always say I'm kind of like living the immigrant's dream.
Are you dual citizenship or
no? Just
okay. So you fully just said,
yes,
I'm done, live here.
Yes,
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's a huge. I don't think we put enough emphasis on how much it takes to become a citizen.
Yeah,
so that's a huge accomplishment.
I was fairly fortunate. The green card situation I got through work and got before I got married. Despite what some people may say.
I see. I know what happened now.
Yes, yeah. But then I finally became a citizen. I did that off my own back after I'd quit work. But yeah, so I was, we started the company. I was employee number 4? I think I was number 4. Yeah, employee number 4 in the oil and gas company. We supplied raw material to people like Halliburton, Baker Hughes, Schlumberger, people like that. And I was able to like build the warehouse and lay it out how I wanted. We ended up with 2 product lines. We had 60 employees, majority operational or health and safety. So I had a lot of those employees under my belt. But I knew that it wasn't, well, I've always been entrepreneurial, but I've never had that eureka, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I can do this differently and I can do it better than anybody else. I've never had that like idea. But when Maggie, like, she showed this incredible talent for arranging flowers, and I had the sort of business training from being an operations manager, it kind of like, it fueled me to like try and help her as a business person, because she loves being creative. She'll tell you that she can either be creative or a business person. It's hard for her to be kind of both at once.
Different sides of the brain.
Yeah. And that's I think why we've worked so well together. And I was already doing, you know, I do the bookkeeping, sales tax, property tax, payroll, all that other boring side of the business, which people, because I think my family still think that we stare at each other across a flower bench as we arrange flowers together, but we are an actual legitimate business. So I was kind of doing that and my operational role. But again, like Maggie said, I was working Monday through Friday, but then like usually like Wednesday night through Friday night, I was at the shop building things. And then also the weekends I was helping deliver and execute weddings. And it just got to a point where we were kind of busy enough for me to come on board full time. And I kind of like, I started setting my team up at work in the oil and gas job to kind of succeed on their own without me being there, because my boss, excuse me, he was like fully supportive of what I was doing,
right? But
he was shocked when I handed my notice in. And to be fair, I think again, it was one of those, another leap of faith that we took. I could probably have gone another year in the oil and gas to just set up financially in a bit better than where we were. But I was like, I've always worked. I've always a worker. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a leap of faith. It's the right time for me to step out. But if we don't generate enough business, then I'll go work at Starbucks, Lowe's, whatever I need to do to pay the bills. So,
Right.
But yeah,
it's not come to that yet.
yeah, but that just like the potential of me stepping out and being full time then freed Maggie up to then go, invest more time going to work with other really well-known florists, like all around the US, and see how they do it, and also get, like a feel for the bigger events and things like that. And then also go and see like wedding planners and go to all like the social events and
All
things
the
like that.
schmoozing.
Yeah. That needs to happen as part of a business. And then we just, slowly grew from there. So yeah, February 2018, I came on board full time, and here we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Short period of growth, it seems like, too.
Yeah, it feels
You
both
know.
short and also when you think about it, you're like, oh, it's been 10 years. That's actually,
Yeah.
that's a long time to own a business.
It has, but I think also we haven't really touched on, I think at the time, the style that we're well known for, there weren't many people in the Houston area doing that at an affordable price point. Plus also Maggie's excellent at curating her Instagram, or the Bramble Bee Instagram. And I really feel that is another, like how we exploded, like kind of onto the scene. A lot of people, they said at the time, I mean, I haven't looked for ages, and we probably lost a few along the way, but we're like over 16,000 followers on Instagram.
Wow.
And we haven't, absolutely, I can swear on a Bible or whatever, we've never bought followers. It's all been organic growth. And it's amazing. If you go on our website and you request for a consultation, there's a place where it's who can we thank for referring you is one of the questions we ask on the intake form. And it's always, it's Google, it's word of mouth. It's a lot of the time, probably 70% is, I followed you on Instagram and now I'm getting married. I'd love for you to do our flowers, sort of thing. So,
and now it's fun because we've been in Tomball long enough that we have a lot of families who have been coming in for retail flowers since their children were in high school, and now they've graduated college and they're getting married, and we get to do their flowers, which is really cool. Also makes me feel really old, but
It's like a generational, generational business. Like you get, once they're finally having kids, they're going to want flowers for that. And then once their kids are growing up, they're going to want flowers for that.
We do baby showers for our brides all the time.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So speaking of, the storefront and everything else, just kind of walk us through becoming a customer.
Yeah.
And what we can expect of that process and how we need to contact you.
Yeah. So we can almost always do flowers day of. So if you need last minute flowers, definitely try. We'll do our best. We can certainly do flowers for you if you give us 24 hours advanced warning. But you can very easily go to our website and see what flowers we have available for the week. Order via the website if you don't want to talk to anybody, or if you need a little bit more hand-holding, just call the shop and any of the people who answer the phone can absolutely take a flower order for you. You are welcome to stop in. We don't often keep flowers just ready-made in the cooler because we want the arrangements to be as fresh as possible for you. So a little advanced warning is helpful to the team. And the more warning you get, the cooler the flowers we can get for you. So special requests like a week in advance would be great. But if you're open to whatever beautiful stuff we have, you literally just have to call the shop and we will get you sorted. And we do local deliveries. So we deliver, I think, within a 15-mile radius.
Yeah, so we do Woodlands and Cypress area.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've tried to make it as easy as
Magnolia
possible.
and-
You can also order flowers directly from our Instagram. So if you're looking at something that you like on Instagram, you can click shop now.
I think that's the big thing with Instagram, Pinterest, and all that too, is it's like I get to see the product and what you have. And it's not like, I always hesitate ordering like shoes or clothes from Amazon or something like that because I don't know if it's going to fit right. I can look at it, think it looks cool, and then it shows up and it looks totally different. But with this, at least you get to see a variety of your products and know even if there's a variation, I can see the differences.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming obviously nothing is the same.
Nope.
You're not going to come and buy something on Monday and then the next Monday or the next Monday come back and it's going to be the same exact product. Even if you order the same thing, still going to have some variation there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what even like not just the retail, the brides who will come in with, they've got a Pinterest board that they've been building and like, yes, we can do something in that style, but number one, we don't want to copy somebody else's
absolutely not
work because that wouldn't be fair to the person who created it in the first place. And also, we don't want to come up short of their expectations. So we are going to do something similar, but it's going to be that Bramble Bee spin on it.
Yeah. So what if I have, like my wife, and again, I'm not a flower guy, so don't get on me here.
Don't worry.
But like I think she used to call them stargazer lilies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if I have a flower like that I want, and I say, I want you to surprise me, but that's her favorite flower. So we can throw that in there. That's something y'all do.
Absolutely. Yep. But again, with special requests, advanced warning is helpful.
Oh, sure.
Because we can't just drop everything, run downtown, go to the wholesaler, because the wholesaler may not have them.
Right.
Stargazers are a popular flower, but and we also there's other things we offer, which we're doing subscriptions where people can go month to month, or they can pay for like 3 deliveries, 5 deliveries, whatever they want, and they can pick the dates. And we usually do kind of like Valentine's Day, wife's birthday, Christmas-ish.
This is what we did for our husbands who are not flower guys. You can call the shop one time, give us all your important dates, and we will make sure she gets a delivery on all those dates, and you don't have to ever
And I
call
think
us
that's
back.
probably the smartest thing for me because I'm not the one that gives you the advanced warning. I'm usually the one walking into Kroger and it's like, okay, cool. Let me check my watch. Yep. Got about 10 minutes till I get home and I need to give her this. So let me see if I can find something on the way home.
Yeah. And that helps us, like with the subscriptions, if there are particular flowers, it'd be up on the board. We've got a system. Obviously, me being operations based, I've tried to like implement. It's hard with creatives, but I've tried to like put as many systems in as possible.
Poor guys wrangling a team of creatives.
And then you have it double because not only are they creatives, but one of them is your wife, so she's going to do whatever she wants to do anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Most people, the rest of the staff are kind of on board with it. They like procedures, and then it's like, oh well, that's Maggie. Yeah, she does what she wants.
We struggle with that in this office all the time because it's like half of what we do is creative, and then the other half is straight business. And it's like, well, we like both, but again, similar to you, it's hard to shut off that side and say, okay, I've got to get into creative mode. Because if I'm in business mode, then it's like anything creative seems like a chore.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. If I'm in that creative mode, if I'm podcasting, if I'm doing something, it's like, oh, we have a sales meeting. I don't want to go to the sales meeting.
Yeah.
I just want to sit here and do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Instagram, what's your handle on there?
It's at Bramble and Bee, all spelled out.
Okay. And then I'm assuming too, Facebook.
Yeah.
Do y'all have a Pinterest?
Pinterest, not so much.
Okay.
We have a Pinterest, but it,
not as.
Yeah. We use it more
Instagram, I'm assuming, is going to be the big one where you can find the most stuff in there.
Definitely.
Yeah. So find you on all the social platforms, find you online.
Yeah.
I think honestly, we've covered so much.
Indeed.
And I never thought that I'd be talking for almost an hour about flowers, but here I am living the dream. And I can't thank y'all enough for coming in and having this discussion with me because it has been kind of an eye opener. So we just launched we have our website, beefymarketing.com/origins, which tells kind of like all the story of the podcast and has the episodes and stuff. But we just checked into this new thing called a pod page. And so we're going to put y'all as a guest on our pod page so that people can also go there and check you out. And that's just podpage.com/small-business-origins. And then they can ask y'all some questions. We can kind of throw that stuff out there.
Cool.
Maybe get you on social media and do like a live Q&A or something. And
do what we can.
Because I know people are going to have a ton more questions. I still probably have a ton more questions, but I think we hit it pretty well. So
Cool.
Thanks for having us.
absolutely. Thank y'all again for coming in, and listeners, viewers, thank y'all for tuning in for another episode of Small Business Origins. We can't thank you enough for supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs just like Mick and Maggie here. If you're looking for something for that special loved one, make sure you stop by their shop, order online, give them a call, but give them a heads up, as we talked about, and let them do something special for that loved one you have in your life. I know that I am definitely that guy who will forget about Valentine's Day and everything else. I can't even tell you what day in February it is. Is it the same date?
Yeah,
It's
same
always
day
the
every year.
14th.
Same
Always the
day.
14th.
But yeah.
I was going to say the 12th for some reason.
Close enough.
So this is
Order
why I need Bramble and Bee in my life, because they can take care of all that stuff for you. So as always, you saw another episode, you listened to another episode, you got to hear an awesome business, Bramble and Bee, Mick and Maggie. Thank them. Thank you, listeners. And as always, stay beefy, my friends.